Why would any man waste a dance on her?
Trevor Hamilton raised his glass with a smug grin. Every boy in tuxedos burst into laughter. Savannah Ashford, 18, paralyzed, the billionaire's only daughter, froze as a tear slid down her cheek.
Look at her, boys!
Then a black serving boy stepped forward, jaw tight, eyes burning.
Miss Ashford is not paralyzed. Dislocated L1 vertebra, pinched sciatic nerve. 12 hospitals missed it.
Trevor snarled.
Shut your mouth! Somebody get the help out of here!
Across the ballroom, the billionaire father shot up from his chair, as if catching the last flicker of hope after 2 long years. And the boy never imagined those few words would change both their lives forever. 3 months earlier, on a gray February morning in Charleston, South Carolina, a county van rolled up the gravel drive of Bellwood Preparatory Academy. The school had stood for 200 years on a hill above the Ashley River. Ivy on its walls, oak doors thicker than a man's arm, the names of senators and oil heirs carved into brass plaques in the library. Out of the van stepped a tall, thin black boy in a thrift store coat, carrying 1 duffel bag and a small wooden case that looked, to the casual eye, like it might hold a violin. His name was Wesley Williams. He was 18 years old, an orphan from St. Augustine's Home for Boys, and the only scholarship student in Bellwood's senior class. Coach Lawrence Moore, a broad-shouldered man with kind eyes and a Marine's haircut, met him at the steps. "Welcome, son. Dining hall serves the staff first, kitchen entrance on the left. Don't take it personal. That's just how things are around here." Wesley nodded once. He didn't take it personal. He had spent most of his life not taking things personal. His mornings began at 4:30. He set tables in the dining hall before sunrise, refilled water carafes during breakfast, polished silverware between classes, served punch at school functions, and washed dishes until midnight on weekends. He spoke quietly. He kept his head down. He did not socialize. The other boys called him the Ghost, or sometimes worse, and walked through him in hallways as if his body did not occupy space. He never complained. He never asked for help. And every night, before he turned out the light in the narrow scholarship dorm on the 4th floor, he touched a small silver locket that hung around his neck, and he whispered the same 2 words. "Good night, Mama." The janitor, an old man named Walter Brown, once swore he heard music from the locked music conservatory at 2 o'clock in the morning. A Viennese waltz, played on a single piano, soft and certain, the kind of music a man plays when he is talking to a ghost. Coach Moore told the janitor to forget what he heard. The janitor did, but he sometimes wondered what kind of orphan plays Strauss at 2 in the morning, and where, exactly, a boy with 1 duffel bag had learned the difference between a real violin and a case that only pretended to hold one. Savannah Ashford was a different kind of ghost. 2 years before that February morning, she had been the brightest girl in Charleston society, a competitive equestrian, a junior debate champion, a debutante in training. She rode her father's prize thoroughbred, a chestnut stallion named Carolina Sky, in the regional dressage finals at the Aiken Hunt Club. The horse spooked at a thunderclap. Savannah went over the rail. Her father reached her 30 seconds later and found her conscious, but unable to feel her legs. She was 16 years old. In the 2 years since, her father, Harrison Ashford III, CEO of Ashford Industries, owner of half of Charleston's medical supply patents, friend to 2 governors and 1 former president, had spent over $32 million trying to give his daughter back her legs. Mayo Clinic, Johns Hopkins, Cleveland Clinic, the Mayo Spine Center, Stanford, UCLA, the Karolinska Institute in Stockholm, Charité in Berlin, the Royal London Hospital, 12 hospitals across 3 continents, 12 teams of the most decorated neurosurgeons alive, 12 identical conclusions. Permanent spinal cord trauma, lower body paralysis, no surgical or non-surgical intervention recommended. Patient should be supported in adjusting to lifelong use of mobility aids. Savannah stopped speaking for 4 months after the 7th diagnosis. She stopped riding. She stopped dancing, and she had been, before the fall, the kind of dancer her ballet instructor had said would one day perform at Lincoln Center. She withdrew from her friends. She read books in the corner of every room. Her mother, Margaret Ashford, watched the brightness in her daughter's eyes fade like a candle in a draught, and prayed every Sunday at St. Michael's Episcopal Church for a miracle her own faith was no longer sure existed. When Margaret proposed the 18th birthday debutante ball at Ashford Manor, 400 guests, the full orchestra, the silver gown, the chandeliers, Harrison resisted. Savannah resisted harder, but Margaret begged with tears in her eyes. "Please, sweetheart, just one night, just to remind the world you're still here." Savannah agreed, because her mother cried, and because somewhere deep beneath the silence, a part of her still wanted, desperately, secretly, to be invited back into her own life. She did not know that the boy who would invite her was, at that exact moment, 3 miles away in a thrift store coat, ironing a borrowed tuxedo, and whispering good night to a locket. She did not know that the senator's son who had once been her boyfriend, the boy who had stopped visiting her hospital room after the second week, was already drafting in his head the cruelest sentence ever spoken in a ballroom in the state of South Carolina. The ballroom of Ashford Manor on the night of January 24th looked like something out of a Henry James novel. 3 baccarat chandeliers, each one shipped from Paris in 1847, burned with a soft golden light over a parquet floor of walnut and cherry, laid by hand in the year George Washington died. Magnolia blossoms floated in crystal bowls along the perimeter. A 12-piece orchestra, in white tie, tuned beneath an oil portrait of Harrison Ashford I. 400 guests, senators, surgeons, oil heirs, 2 governors, the wife of a Supreme Court justice, drank Veuve Clicquot from etched flutes and pretended, with the practiced grace of the very rich, that they did not notice the girl in the silver gown at the edge of the dance floor. Savannah sat in her wheelchair beside the orchestra. Her mother had spent 2 hours that afternoon arranging her hair into a French chignon, fastening pearl drops to her ears, smoothing the silver silk over her motionless knees. Margaret had told her in the mirror, "You look like a queen, sweetheart." Savannah had tried to smile. The smile had not reached her eyes. The first waltz began. Couples paired off. Margaret bent down to Savannah's ear. "I see Daniel Wilson over there. He used to be in your chemistry class. Let me ask him." Savannah caught her mother's sleeve. "Mom, please don't." But Margaret was already crossing the floor. Daniel Wilson, 18, blonde, son of an investment banker, looked at Margaret, looked over her shoulder at Savannah, and looked at his shoes. "I'd love to, Mrs. Ashford, really, but I already promised this one to someone." He had no partner. He found one within 30 seconds. He did not look back. The second waltz. Margaret approached a tall boy named Andrew Davis. Andrew rubbed his wrist. "Sprained it in lacrosse, ma'am. So sorry." He danced the next song with a redhead from Spartanburg. The third. A boy named Christopher Taylor said his phone was buzzing, his grandmother very important, and stepped onto the terrace where he did not, in fact, take any call. The fourth. A boy named Henry Anderson smiled apologetically and said, "Next song, I promise, Mrs. Ashford." There was no next song for him with Savannah. By the 5th refusal, the whispers had started. A woman at table 9 leaned to her husband. "Look away, don't make it worse." A girl Savannah had once tutored in Latin held a napkin to her mouth to hide a giggle. Headmaster Gregory Wilson, who had been invited as a courtesy donor guest, set down his glass and pretended to study the orchestra. Coach Moore, there as Wesley's chaperone, felt his jaw lock. Margaret was crying now, silently, behind Savannah's chair. Savannah's hands had gone bone white on the armrests. She stared down at the silver hem of her gown and willed herself not to break in front of 400 people. "Just one waltz, sweetheart, just one." Her mother's voice from that afternoon kept playing in her head, the way a song you don't want to remember plays. Then Trevor Hamilton walked in. He had been late on purpose. He wore a $3,000 Tom Ford tuxedo, custom cut. His father, Senator Charles Hamilton of South Carolina, was at table 1, deep in conversation with a defense contractor. Trevor scanned the room, saw Savannah at the edge of the floor with her crying mother behind her, and his mouth curved into something that was not quite a smile. Trevor had dated Savannah for 9 months before the accident. He had visited her twice in the hospital, once with flowers, once with a teddy bear, and then he had stopped. He had stopped because his friends teased him. He had stopped because his father said quietly, "Son, a Hamilton doesn't carry dead weight." He had stopped because he was 18 and a coward, and he did not know yet that cowardice has a way of arriving at its own ballroom, eventually dressed in a tuxedo. He raised his champagne flute. The light caught the rim. 5 of his lacrosse teammates gathered around him like satellites. He spoke loud, pitched deliberately to carry to the orchestra and back. Why would any man here waste a dance on half a cripple in a wheelchair? A laugh broke, then another, then 6. Look at her, boys. A broken doll nobody returned to the store. Cat got your legs? Savannah did not move. She did not lift her head. A single tear traced the line of her jaw and disappeared into the silver collar of her gown. Margaret pressed both hands over her mouth and made a small, wounded sound, the kind a mother makes only once in her life and never forgets. Harrison Ashford rose halfway from his chair at table 1. His wife caught his wrist. "Harrison, not in front of everyone, please." He sat back down. His knuckles whitened around the stem of his glass. Headmaster Wilson did not move. The 2 governors did not move. The wife of the Supreme Court Justice did not move. 400 of the wealthiest people in 3 states held their drinks at chest height and watched a paralyzed 18-year-old girl be publicly destroyed at her own birthday ball. And not a single one of them stood up. At the far end of the room, beside a champagne fountain shaped like the Ashford family crest, a tall, thin black boy in a borrowed tuxedo set down the bottle he was holding. He removed his white serving gloves. He folded them very carefully and placed them on the silver tray. Coach Moore across the room met his eye. One small nod. Go. Wesley Williams started walking. Wesley crossed the longest 40 feet of his life. The orchestra was still playing, a soft Chopin nocturne the conductor had chosen to fill the silence after Trevor's laughter. But every guest at every table turned their head as he passed, one after another, like wheat bending in a wave. A countess lowered her champagne. A surgeon leaned forward. Nobody knew what they were watching. They only knew they were watching something. Trevor stepped into the aisle, blocking the path, his lacrosse buddies fanning out behind him. "Where do you think you're going, bus boy?" Wesley did not stop. He stepped around Trevor the way a river steps around a rock. Trevor's hand shot out and caught his elbow. "I asked you a question, boy." Wesley looked down at the hand on his elbow, then up into Trevor's eyes, and for the first time that night, something in Trevor's face flickered. The small animal warning a man gets when he has touched something he has misjudged. Trevor let go. Wesley kept walking. He reached Savannah's wheelchair and knelt. Not bowed, not stooped, but lowered himself to her exact eye level, the way a man kneels at an altar. Margaret stepped back, hands pressed to her mouth. "My name is Wesley Williams. I work the kitchen at Bellwood. I'm sorry for what they said, for all of it." Savannah did not lift her head. Her tears made dark spots on the silver silk over her knees. "Miss Ashford, may I have this dance?" It came out so gentle, so absent of pity, that her head came up slowly as if pulled by a string she had forgotten she still had. Her eyes, green, ringed in red, met his. "I know what they said about your legs. They were wrong. 12 hospitals were wrong. Your spine is not the prison they told you it was. I can feel it from here." He paused. "But before I prove that, I'd like to be the first man tonight who treats you like a woman, not a diagnosis. Will you give me one dance?" Margaret made a small breaking sound behind the chair. Savannah's lower lip trembled. Then her right hand, the one that always shook from disuse, lifted from the armrest, slowly, like something rising from deep water. She placed it in his. "Yes," she whispered. A gasp moved through the front tables. Trevor laughed, but the laugh came half a beat too late and a beat too thin. "This should be hilarious," he muttered. None of his friends laughed with him. Headmaster Wilson stood. "Now wait just a moment." Coach Moore placed a single hand on his shoulder. "Gregory, sit down." "Lawrence, I cannot allow—" "Sit down. You are about to see something you'll tell your grandchildren about." The headmaster sat. Wesley turned his head toward the orchestra. He raised 3 fingers, slowly, just above the chair, and held them in a small, polished gesture the conductor had not seen executed in person since Vienna, 2014. Jeffrey Brown's baton froze midair. His face went white. He looked at the boy. He looked at the wheelchair. He looked back at the boy. And very slowly, Jeffrey lowered his baton and whispered 3 German words to his musicians. The Chopin stopped. The violins lifted. A long, sweet, perfectly tuned A rose into the chandeliers and hung there like a promise. At table 4, an 81-year-old woman in an emerald gown set down her cane and rose to her feet. Her name was Madame Eleanor Brooks. She had not danced in 14 years. She had not been seen standing in public in 3. She pressed her hand to her chest, her eyes locked on the boy kneeling beside Savannah Ashford's wheelchair, and whispered to no one, "It can't be." Wesley placed his right hand lightly behind Savannah's shoulder. His left hand stayed in hers. He did not look at the room. He looked only at her. "Trust me 1 minute, Miss Ashford. Just one." And the first chord of Tales from the Vienna Woods rolled across the parquet floor of Ashford Manor. The opening bars of Strauss filled the ballroom, but Wesley did not begin a waltz. He began an examination. His right hand, resting behind Savannah's shoulder, slid 1 inch lower along the silver gown. Then another inch. His fingertips found the small, hidden ridge where her dress closure ran along her spine, and through that thin layer of silk, his hand began to read her body the way another man might read a page of Braille. She felt his fingers stop. Press. Release. Move. "What are you doing?" she breathed. "Listening." His thumb settled at the base of her rib cage and walked, vertebra by vertebra, downward. T10. T11. T12. L1. He paused at L1 for 3 full seconds. His jaw tightened. He counted the rotation in the bone beneath his thumb. 4 millimeters left of center, 8 degrees of axial twist, and then he traveled lower, fingertips light as moth wings, along the path of the sciatic nerve where it exited the lower spine and ran down into the muscles she could not feel. He felt the ropey, fibrotic tissue gripping that nerve like a fist that had never opened. He closed his eyes for 1 heartbeat. He opened them. "Miss Ashford, I need to tell you 3 things, and I need you to listen to all 3 before you answer me. Okay? 1. Your spinal cord is intact. It always has been." She made a small sound like a breath catching on glass. 2. The L1 vertebra above your injury rotated when you fell from the horse. It locked into a position that compressed the dura around the sciatic nerve root. Over 24 months, the surrounding ligament has fibrosed, scarred, around that compression. 12 surgeons read the MRIs and saw a paralyzed cord, because that's what they expected to see. Nobody examined the rotation. Her hand had gone cold in his. 3. I can fix it. Tonight, in this room, in about 3 minutes, if you will trust me. Behind the wheelchair, Margaret Ashford had heard every word. She stumbled forward and gripped the back of the chair to keep from collapsing. Sir, who are you? What are you saying to my daughter?" Wesley did not look up. His eyes stayed on Savannah's. "Ma'am, I'm asking your daughter's permission, not yours, not the headmaster's, not anyone else's in this room. Hers." From across the ballroom, Harrison Ashford was already in motion, weaving between tables, his face the color of old paper. "Stop! Stop this! Margaret, get away from her!" "Harrison!" The voice that stopped him was old and trembling and unmistakable. Madame Eleanor Brooks had crossed half the room on her cane. She caught Harrison's sleeve with a hand spotted by 81 winters. Harrison, look at his hands. Eleanor, look at his hands.
Harrison looked.
Wesley's right hand was still resting along his daughter's spine, and the fingers were not pressing wildly, not searching. They were placed, each fingertip on a precise anatomical landmark. Index finger on the L1 spinous process, middle finger 2 vertebrae down, thumb cradling the iliac crest. The hand of a man who had been doing this since before he could read.
Eleanor's voice cracked.
Harrison, I trained under the best spinal manipulators alive for 40 years. I have never seen a hand find an L1 rotation through a ball gown in under 30 seconds. Let him work. Eleanor, my daughter is not a... Then ask her, Harrison, not me, her.
Harrison turned to Savannah.
His mouth opened, closed. He had spent $32 million and 24 months trying to find an answer. And the answer, if it was an answer, was kneeling on his ballroom floor in a borrowed tuxedo, holding his daughter's hand. Savannah, he said. His voice broke on her name. Baby, whatever you want.
She looked at Wesley.
The tears had stopped. Something else had taken their place. A small, terrible flame Margaret had not seen in her daughter's eyes since the morning of the fall. Do it, Savannah whispered. Wesley nodded once. I need you off the chair, Miss Ashford, face down. We can use that chaise.
The chaise longue was 8 feet away,
a velvet antique upholstered in deep blue. Wesley slid one arm beneath Savannah's knees, the other beneath her shoulders, and lifted her with the spinal alignment of a surgical orderly who had done the lift 1,000 times. He laid her face down on the chaise, smoothed the silver gown over her legs with quiet respect, and turned to the room. I need everyone behind the table line, now. No phones, no flashes.
Nobody moved.
Coach Moore stepped forward and said one word, low and clear. Move. 400 people moved. Wesley knelt beside the chaise. He laid his palms flat on Savannah's back. Miss Ashford, the first step does not hurt. It will feel warm. The second step will feel like pins and needles. The third step will be one sharp sound. After that, we will know. Wesley? Yes. What if you're wrong? He was quiet for a long second. Then we will have lost 3 minutes, and you will be exactly where you were before I walked across this room, and I will spend the rest of my life apologizing. But Miss Ashford, his voice dropped, I am not wrong. He found the 3 points along the sciatic pathway. He pressed each one. He held each for 7 heartbeats, counting on her pulse beneath his palm. 3 gates release, his mother had called it. 3 doors that have been locked too long. On the 7th heartbeat of the 3rd gate, Savannah gasped. I feel heat. Wesley, I feel heat. Margaret broke down completely. She fell to her knees beside the chaise, gripping her daughter's hand, sobbing without sound. Harrison stood over them, frozen, one tear cutting silently down his face. Trevor Hamilton, somewhere behind the line of tables, made a noise in his throat. This is rigged. This is some kind of trick. Nobody turned to look at him. Nobody had to. Wesley positioned his hands, the right palm flat over L1, the left forearm braced beneath Savannah's lower ribs. Breathe in, now out, now empty, on 3. 1, 2, 3. The sound that came from Savannah's spine was small, clean, a single definitive snap, like a piano hammer striking a long, silent key. She inhaled sharply. Her eyes flew open. Oh my God! Oh my God! I can feel my feet! Wesley did not celebrate. He moved. His hand stayed steady on Savannah's back as he watched her toes. Small, pale, motionless for 2 years, curl inside the silver heels she had not been able to feel since the morning of the fall. They curled once. They uncurled. They curled again. Margaret pressed her face into the velvet beside her daughter's shoulder and wept the way a mother weeps only once in her life. Wesley spoke quietly. Miss Ashford, I'm going to help you sit up, slowly. The nerves are waking. They will feel like fire for the next minute. That is normal. That is good. He slid one arm under her shoulders and brought her upright on the chaise, with the careful economy of a man who had performed the same motion 1,000 times in a clinic he was not old enough, by any official record, to have ever worked in. He knelt before her, both her hands in his, and looked up into her face.
Now stand.
Wesley, I can't. You can. Lean your weight forward into my hands. Let your legs do nothing. Just let them be there. She leaned. She rose.
8 inches. 12 inches.
The silver hem of her gown unfurled toward the parquet floor like a flag being raised. Her knees shook. Wesley's hands held her steady. For 3 full seconds, Savannah Ashford stood on the ballroom floor of her own birthday party for the first time in 24 months. And then her right foot, by itself, took half a step forward. The sound that came out of Margaret Ashford was not a word. It was older than words.
Harrison fell to one knee beside his wife.
His hand covered his mouth. He did not try to hide his tears. And then, in the front row of the silent crowd, the chain of Wesley's silver locket, the small one he had touched every night for 7 years, caught on the cufflink of his borrowed tuxedo as he straightened up. The clasp opened. The locket fell into his palm. The hinge swung wide. Madam Eleanor Brooks, 3 feet away, saw the photograph inside, and her cane clattered to the floor.
William!
The whisper carried. Heads turned. Eleanor's hand reached trembling toward the photograph, but did not touch it. She did not need to touch it. She knew the face. Everyone in the field had known the face.
It was a small picture, slightly faded.
A tall black man in a white doctor's coat, kneeling on the porch of a wood-frame country clinic, holding a laughing 5-year-old boy in his arms. Behind them, the hand-painted sign read, Williams Family Medicine, Free Care, Knox Hollow, West Virginia. Eleanor's voice broke open. That's Dr. William Williams. The William Williams. The miracle doctor of Appalachia.
A shockwave moved through the older guests.
A retired neurosurgeon at table 6 rose to his feet. So did the wife of the Supreme Court Justice. Her late father had been treated by Dr. Williams in 1991. A woman from Atlanta covered her face with both hands and sat down hard, because Dr. William Williams had healed her sister's spine in 2009, 3 months before he died.
Wesley's eyes did not leave Savannah,
but his free hand closed gently around the locket, and the smallest tremble, the first one he had shown all night, passed through his shoulders. Eleanor took 1 step toward him. Her voice was old and full of something close to prayer. Young man, look at me. Are you Will's boy? Wesley turned his head slowly. He looked at the 81-year-old woman who had once trained his father at Johns Hopkins. He nodded once. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, child.
Harrison rose from his knees beside his wife. He took 2 steps toward Wesley. His voice was a wreck. Your father was Dr. William Williams, the man who saved my niece in Charleston General the night of the bridge collapse. Yes, sir. And your mother? Margaret Williams, ER nurse. She died of breast cancer 4 years ago. Before she did, she taught me everything my father taught her. Every night, 4 hours a night for 4 years.
Eleanor closed her eyes.
2 tears moved down her face into the powder she had applied that afternoon. Why didn't anyone know, child? Why are you washing dishes at Bellwood? Wesley looked down at the locket in his hand. Because my father always said, a doctor who heals to be known is not a doctor. He is a salesman. And my mother told me on the night she died, Wesley, only ever heal because somebody needs you, not because anybody is watching.
The ballroom was so quiet you could hear the orchestra's first violin set down his bow with shaking hands.
Savannah, still standing, still trembling, slid her hand into Wesley's and squeezed. Then tonight, Wesley, somebody needed you. The hardest part of Savannah Ashford's recovery did not begin when she stood. It began in the silence that followed.
Because Savannah was standing.
But standing is not walking. And walking, after 24 months of motor atrophy, is a country with its own language. And that language has to be relearned 1 syllable at a time. Wesley felt her right knee start to buckle. He caught her under the elbow before she could fall.
Easy, Miss Ashford. The signal is reaching the muscle now, but the muscle has forgotten what to do with the signal. We have to teach it. Slowly. Together. Here, look at me. She looked at him. Her eyes were wet and wild and bright in a way Margaret had not seen since her daughter was 16. I am going to walk you across this room. 8 steps. We are going to dance the Strauss the way you were supposed to dance it tonight. But your legs are babies right now. They are going to wobble. They are going to want to quit. You are going to lean every ounce of your weight into my hands. Do you understand? Yes. And if you fall, I will catch you. Every time. Until your legs remember they are yours. Yes. He turned his head 2 degrees toward the orchestra. Jeffrey Brown was already lifting his baton. The first violin had repositioned the bow. None of them had to be told. Then Trevor Hamilton broke from the line of tables. This is fraud! This is fraud! He's some kind of street magician. He's drugged her. Look at her. She can barely... He shoved past 2 of his lacrosse friends and moved toward Savannah and Wesley with his hand already lifting, as if he meant to grab Savannah's arm and pull her back into the wheelchair to prove a point. He did not get within 3 feet of her. Coach Lawrence Moore stepped into his path the way a wall steps into a path. 6'4", 240 pounds, 26 years in the United States Marine Corps before he became a high school football coach. His left hand closed around Trevor's wrist with the gentleness of a man who had broken bones and chose tonight not to. Son. Get your hands off me, Coach. My father will... Son. Your father is in this room. So is mine in spirit. So is every man and woman who ever taught us that there are lines a gentleman does not cross. You have crossed every one of them tonight. You are going to step back. You are going to sit down, and you are not going to say another word until that young lady has finished her dance. Or what? Coach Moore did not raise his voice. Or I will let her father decide what happens to you. And right now, Trevor, Harrison Ashford does not look like a man who is feeling merciful. Trevor turned. Harrison Ashford was 3 steps behind him, his face the color of a thundercloud, his hands open at his sides in the specific, terrifying stillness of a wealthy man, one decision away from ending another man's life. Trevor's mouth opened. Nothing came out. He stepped back. He sat down. He did not say another word. The orchestra began. Strauss again. Tales from the Vienna Woods, picked up at the second movement, the slow one, the one that begins like a sunrise. Wesley turned back to Savannah. 8 steps, Miss Ashford. Right foot first. Just there. She lifted her right foot. It hovered. Her knee shook. Her thigh, the muscle of which had not fired voluntarily in 2 years, trembled like a struck wire, and then it fired. The foot came forward 4 inches. The heel touched the parquet. A tear ran down Margaret's face. She did not move to wipe it. Left foot, don't look down. Look at me. Savannah looked at Wesley. Her left foot came forward. 5 inches. Now we breathe. Now we sway. Strauss says, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Hear it? Let your hips find it. Let your shoulders go first. Your feet will follow. He shifted his weight gently to his left. Savannah's weight followed his. Slow, hesitant. Then, on the 3rd beat, less hesitant. Her hips moved. Her right foot moved. A small, complete circle began to turn on the parquet floor of Ashford Manor, the center of which was a black orphan in a borrowed tuxedo and a billionaire's daughter in a silver gown that had been waiting 24 months to remember how to move. In the front row, Madame Eleanor Brooks lifted both hands to her mouth. The first full rotation completed. Savannah did not fall. The second began. Wesley's right hand drifted, just for an instant, into the proper closed hold frame. The position adaptive ballroom dancers used when a partner was learning to bear weight again. And Eleanor Brooks made a small, broken sound and said to nobody, "That is Vivian's frame." She did not yet know that Wesley's mother, Margaret Williams, ER nurse, had been trained before her marriage to William by a Vienna-born adaptive ballroom coach named Vivian Hartman, who had taught Margaret one figure for every spinal injury she would ever see in an emergency room. Vivian had said, When you teach a body to walk again, teach it to dance. The dance is the proof. Margaret had taught Wesley all of it. Savannah, 3 rotations in, suddenly laughed. It was the first laugh out of her mouth in 2 years and 4 months. It was short and stunned, and as bright and unexpected as a flashbulb. Her mother heard it and cried out, once sharply, and then began to laugh and weep at the same time, holding the back of an empty chair to stay on her feet. Wesley smiled, small, private, only for Savannah. There she is, 4 rotations. 5. The orchestra rose into the famous lifting phrase of the Vienna woods, the one that climbs and asks the body to climb with it. Wesley did not push Savannah past her strength. He did the dance for her, with her, around her, the way a strong wind carries a young bird that has just left the nest, close enough to catch her, far enough to let her fly. On the 6th rotation, Savannah's left foot, the weaker one, slipped. She started to go down. Wesley caught her. He did not break frame. He did not stop the music. He swept his right arm beneath her knees, lifted her into a controlled cradle for exactly 2 beats of the waltz, brought her back to her feet on the 3rd beat, and resumed the rotation as if nothing had happened. The room exhaled. Headmaster Wilson, on his feet now, hand pressed to his chest, whispered to Coach Moore, "How long has he been training?" Coach Moore did not look away from the dance. "Since before he could read, Gregory." The 7th rotation. The 8th. Wesley brought Savannah, with the lightest possible pressure on her right shoulder, into the final figure. A long, slow, supported lean backward, his hand cradling her spine exactly where her father had once cradled her as a baby. The chandeliers caught in her dark hair. Her silver gown opened around them like a flower. The orchestra hit the resolving chord, and held it. Held it. Held it. Wesley brought her up. Savannah stood on her own 2 feet, in the center of the ballroom of Ashford Manor, with her hand in the hand of a boy who had walked out of a county van 3 months ago with 1 duffel bag and a locket. And the room of 400 millionaires understood all at once what it had just been allowed to witness. The first person to applaud was Madame Eleanor Brooks, 81 years old, standing without her cane. The second was Harrison Ashford. He was already weeping. The third was every soul in that room. Surgeons, senators, governors, the wife of a Supreme Court justice, 6 lacrosse boys who would never again look at themselves in a mirror without flinching. And the applause did not stop for 4 full minutes. Savannah turned her face up to Wesley's. Her voice came out small and steady and absolutely certain. "I forgot I was still in here." She pressed her hand flat over her own heart. Wesley kissed her knuckles, slow, sacred, the way a knight kisses the hand of a queen, and bowed his head. "Welcome back, Miss Ashford." When the applause finally faded, the ballroom of Ashford Manor was not the same room it had been an hour before. Harrison Ashford walked slowly across the parquet floor, past the orchestra, past Madame Eleanor Brooks, past the chaise where his daughter had been lying face down 4 minutes ago, and stopped in front of Wesley Williams. He did something no man in his bloodline had done in 3 generations. He knelt. The CEO of Ashford Industries, friend to 2 governors, worth $4.5 billion, went down on 1 knee in his own ballroom in front of an 18-year-old black orphan in a borrowed tuxedo and took both of Wesley's hands in his. "Son, there is no amount of money on this earth that can repay what you just gave my family. But for as long as I draw breath, and after, you will never want for anything. You will never sleep in a strange bed. You will never wash another dish unless you choose to. From this night forward, the Ashford family is your family, if you will have us." Wesley's eyes were wet for the first time all evening. He swallowed once. "Sir, my father would have done the same thing for free." "I know, son. I know he would have. That is exactly why we are going to honor him." Harrison rose. He turned to face 400 guests still standing in their places. "For 2 years, I told myself there was no answer for my daughter. I was wrong. Tonight, a boy this room treated as invisible gave her back her legs and gave me back my child. I have one announcement before this evening ends. He looked at Wesley. Effective tomorrow morning, the Ashford Foundation will commit $50 million to the establishment of the William Williams Memorial Clinic in Knox Hollow, West Virginia. Free care, no exceptions. Run by Dr. Williams's son when he is ready, and by the finest physicians in this country until he is. Savannah, standing beside Wesley with one hand on his arm for balance, turned her face up to her father's and smiled the smile he had not seen in 2 years. Across the room, Trevor Hamilton sat alone. His friends had moved 3 tables away. His father had already left. The video of what happened in the ballroom of Ashford Manor reached 11 million views in 72 hours. A guest at table 6, a woman whose husband had served 2 terms in the South Carolina State Senate, had quietly filmed the entire dance on her phone, beginning the moment Wesley knelt at the wheelchair. She uploaded it the next morning with a single caption, "I was there. This is real." By Tuesday, the New York Times had a reporter at the gates of Ashford Manor. By Wednesday, the Today Show was calling. By Friday, Savannah Ashford, walking with a cane, slowly, but walking, had given her first interview from the steps of her family's house, with Wesley standing one quiet step behind her. The hashtag Justice for Wesley trended for 9 days. Trevor Hamilton's slurs from the ballroom, all of them caught on the same live stream Trevor's own father had insisted Bellwood arrange to promote the school's charity ball, were dissected on every cable network in the country. The footage of him calling a black orphan a jungle monkey in front of 400 witnesses 6 seconds before that orphan healed a girl 12 hospitals could not heal became the single most replayed clip of the year. Senator Charles Hamilton lost his re-election in November by 22 points. His concession speech did not mention his son. Trevor was expelled from Bellwood Preparatory Academy within 96 hours. The University of Virginia rescinded his admission. 3 years later, the last public sighting of him was a wedding photo from a small private ceremony in Wyoming, where nobody on the bride's side had ever heard of Ashford Manor. Wesley Williams, in the spring of that year, accepted a full scholarship to Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine, the same school his father had graduated from 31 years earlier. The scholarship was funded by the Ashford Foundation in his father's name. The acceptance letter was hand-delivered to St. Augustine's Home for Boys by Madam Eleanor Brooks, who had personally walked it through the admissions office with a single sentence. His father stood in this room in 1989. His son will stand in it again. Savannah Ashford began intensive physical therapy 3 days after the ball. By spring, she was walking unaided. By summer, she was riding again. A calm bay mare, not her old chestnut, on the family's South Carolina farm. By autumn, she had been accepted to Duke University, where she would later complete a law degree specializing in disability rights. Every year on the anniversary of the ball, she and Wesley returned to the parquet floor of Ashford Manor, in front of the same orchestra and the same Madam Eleanor Brooks, and danced one slow waltz to Tales from the Vienna Woods, the only encore the room ever asked for. The William Williams Memorial Clinic opened in Knox Hollow, West Virginia, 11 months after the ball. The building was the restored country clinic from the photograph inside Wesley's locket. The hand-painted sign on the porch was the same one his father had hung in 1996. Inside the front entrance hung a single framed quotation in Margaret Williams's handwriting, copied exactly from the last letter she wrote her son. "Only ever heal because somebody needs you, not because anybody is watching." Coach Lawrence Moore retired from Bellwood the following June. At his retirement dinner, when asked the secret of his 30-year career, he said only this: "I had the honor of carrying Dr. William Williams's casket in 2017. I had the honor of watching over his boy in 2026. Some debts you spend a lifetime paying. The lucky ones, you get to pay in full." This is not, in the end, a story about dancing. It is a story about who we choose to see and who we choose to walk past. It is a story about the boy refilling water glasses at the edge of a room full of millionaires, the girl in the silver gown nobody asked to dance,
The father on his knees, the mother weeping behind a wheelchair, and the 400 witnesses who almost let cruelty win because cruelty was wearing a tuxedo. Every ballroom has a Wesley. Every wheelchair has a Savannah. Every senator's son who calls a black orphan a jungle monkey in front of 400 people will, eventually, sit alone at his own table while the world walks past him. And every quiet servant whose hands have been trained by a parent who loved him will, sooner or later, be asked to stand up in a room he was never invited to, and decide in 3 seconds whether his gift is for himself or for the stranger who needs him. Dignity does not require working legs. Talent does not require a famous last name. The cruelest sentence in the English language is the one that turns a person into a thing, broken doll, jungle monkey, half a cripple, the help. And the kindest act in any language is the act taken when nobody expects it of you, in a room where nobody is paying you to take it. If this story moved you, if you have ever been the Wesley or the Savannah, or one of the 400 people who stayed in their seats and wish tonight that they had not, share this video with somebody who needs to see it. Send it to the friend who has been told they are finished. Send it to the parent raising a child the world is already trying to write off. And subscribe to this channel, because we tell stories like this one every week, and we tell them for people exactly like you. Type hashtag Justice for Wesley in the comments if you believe a quiet boy with trained hands is worth more than a senator's son with a sneer.
$32 million, 12 hospitals, and the answer was pouring champagne at the back of the room. You know what haunts me about this story? It's not Trevor. Guys like Trevor are loud, but they're easy to spot. What haunts me is the 400 people who sat in their chairs, senators, surgeons, governors, watch a girl get destroyed at her own birthday. And not one of them stood up until the boy nobody saw coming decided nobody needed him. Wesley's mother told him before she died, "Only ever here because somebody needs you, not because anybody is watching." That's the thing. Wesley wasn't supposed to matter in that room, and that is exactly why he was the only one who did. So let me ask you something. How many Wesleys have you walked past without knowing what they carried inside? And in your life, when the room went quiet and someone needed you to stand up, did you? Or did you stay in your chair? Drop this for Wesley in the comments. Share this with someone who's been told they're finished. They need it tonight. And subscribe. We tell stories like this every week. Dignity doesn't require working legs. It never did.